We sometimes fill our schedules to avoid sitting still, to avoid silence, to avoid asking ourselves what we really want or what we no longer want. And while structure is healthy, overscheduling is just another form of clutter. It leaves no room for rest, no room for spontaneity, no room for simple joy. Ask yourself, which activities energize me? Which ones drain me? Which ones do I do out of guilt or habit? You're allowed to edit your time. You're allowed to say no even if you've always said yes. You're allowed to make space for slowness. You're allowed to cancel the plan and walk in the garden instead. Because a clear calendar isn't emptiness, it's potential. And sometimes the richest moments happen in the spaces we choose not to fill. 8. The emotional objects that weigh the most. We've saved this one for last, not because it's least important, but because it's often the most difficult. Some clutter isn't physical. It isn't digital. It isn't in your calendar. It's emotional. It's the feeling you get when you walk past the box of letters from someone who hurt you. It's the wedding dress of a marriage that ended long ago. It's the gift from a person who left, not just the object, but the silence that came after. These things might be beautiful. They might be expensive. They might even be rare. But what they carry, what they evoke, can freeze you in a time that no longer exists. And yet we hold on, because letting go feels like erasing history. But the truth is, those memories live inside you. You don't need the object to remember them. You don't need the reminder of loss to prove that it mattered. Letting go isn't forgetting. It's choosing peace over pain. It's making room for healing. This doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to throw things in a bin or burn them in a fire. You can lay your hands on the object. Thank it. Say, you were part of my life. You meant something, but I no longer want to carry this weight. We sometimes fill our schedules to avoid sitting still, to avoid silence, to avoid asking ourselves what we really want or what we no longer want. And while structure is healthy, overscheduling is just another form of clutter. It leaves no room for rest, no room for spontaneity, no room for simple joy. Ask yourself, which activities energize me? Which ones drain me? Which ones do I do out of guilt or habit? You're allowed to edit your time. You're allowed to say no even if you've always said yes. You're allowed to make space for slowness. You're allowed to cancel the plan and walk in the garden instead. Because a clear calendar isn't emptiness, it's potential. And sometimes the richest moments happen in the spaces we choose not to fill. 8. The emotional objects that weigh the most. We've saved this one for last, not because it's least important, but because it's often the most difficult. Some clutter isn't physical. It isn't digital. It isn't in your calendar. It's emotional. It's the feeling you get when you walk past the box of letters from someone who hurt you. It's the wedding dress of a marriage that ended long ago. It's the gift from a person who left, not just the object, but the silence that came after. These things might be beautiful. They might be expensive. They might even be rare. But what they carry, what they evoke, can freeze you in a time that no longer exists. And yet we hold on, because letting go feels like erasing history. But the truth is, those memories live inside you. You don't need the object to remember them. You don't need the reminder of loss to prove that it mattered. Letting go isn't forgetting. It's choosing peace over pain. It's making room for healing. This doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to throw things in a bin or burn them in a fire. You can lay your hands on the object. Thank it. Say, you were part of my life. You meant something, but I no longer want to carry this weight. In photo libraries filled with pictures you'll never look at again. In apps you don't use but can't bring yourself to delete. It's silent. It doesn't fall off shelves or pile up on tables, but it crowds the mind just the same. For many people over 60, technology arrived later in life. You adapted out of necessity, out of curiosity, sometimes out of pressure. But no one really taught us how to tidy the digital world. And so we didn't. We just added, and saved, and scrolled. And now, your tablet freezes. Your phone is slow. You feel overwhelmed, not by what's in your hands, but by what it holds. We don't often talk about the mental weight of digital clutter, but it's real. A cluttered screen leads to a cluttered mind. And unlike a messy room, this kind of chaos is harder to see and therefore easier to ignore. But here's the truth. You don't need 47 apps. You don't need every photo of every meal or blurry landscape. You don't need 10 years of saved messages from people who no longer speak to you. You need space. You need stillness. You need simplicity. Start small. Delete 3 apps you haven't used in the last 6 months. Unsubscribe from 5 emails you never open. Create 1 photo album, a digital favorites, and let it be the place you actually revisit. Not because technology is bad, but because your attention is sacred, and clutter in any form steals it. 7. The schedule that got too full with things you don't love. Another kind of clutter that sneaks in as we age is schedule clutter. Yes, even in retirement, especially in retirement. At first, the open calendar feels like freedom. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. But slowly, it begins to fill. A little lunch here, a club meeting there, a doctor's appointment, a neighbor's request, a favor, a task, a commitment, until one day you look at your week and realize, I'm just as busy as before, but I'm not any more fulfilled. Here's the quiet truth. If it hurts, cry. If it stirs a memory, honor it. If it belongs to someone no longer here, speak their name aloud, and then choose to keep or to release. But let it be a conscious choice, not a quiet burial, because what you face transforms, and what you avoid controls you. 5. The things that belong to someone else's life. This one is tender. It comes in quietly, dressed as duty or kindness. You keep things not because you need them, but because someone else once did. Your grown children's old toys, your partner's and used tools, a friend's dishes, a sibling's coat, boxes from a parent long gone. They're not yours. Not really, but they live in your home, and you carry them. At first, it feels generous, holding space for others, protecting their memories. But slowly, invisibly, it becomes something else, a form of self-erasure. Because every object we store for someone else takes up room that could belong to us. And over time, a strange thing happens. You begin to feel like a guest in your own home, surrounded by other people's histories, but unsure of your own presence. Here's what we've learned. You are allowed to return objects to their owners. You are allowed to ask, do you still want this? You are allowed to say, I've held this long enough. You are allowed to release what no longer belongs to your life, even if it once mattered deeply. Because creating a space that reflects you, your pace, your peace, your present, is not selfish. It's a gift to yourself and to those who visit. They'll feel it, the calm, the clarity, and you'll feel it too. Not in loud ways, but in the way your shoulders lower, the way your breath deepens, the way you start to say, quietly but confidently, this is my space. This is my life. 6. The digital clutter that feels invisible but isn't. Not all clutter lives in drawers. Some of it lives on screens, in devices that blink and buzz, in inboxes with 12,000 unread emails. But the truth is, most of the things we save, just in case, never get used. Not once. And while they sit waiting for their purpose, they crowd our lives, confuse our spaces, and reinforce the idea that we can't trust the future. So here's what we suggest. Choose the best of each category. The sharpest knife, the warmest coat, the towel you reach for first. Let the rest go. Not because they're useless, but because you're choosing to live from trust, not from fear. And if it feels difficult, remind yourself, true security doesn't live in duplicates. It lives in clarity, in knowing what you need and not needing more than that. 4. The corners that hold avoidance. Every home has them. A room, a box, a cupboard, the place where everything else goes. Where we put what we don't want to face, not just physically, but emotionally. old papers, clothing from another life, things left behind by someone who isn't coming back. We tell ourselves we'll get to it eventually, but time passes, and that space stays untouched, gathering not just dust, but resistance. Here's the truth. Clutter is rarely about the object itself. It's about what the object represents. That unopened box in the corner, it's not just stuff. It might be grief, or regret, or unfinished decisions you didn't feel ready to make. And that's okay. We're human. We protect ourselves. But there comes a time, and for many, retirement is that time, when the things we avoid start to weigh more than the things we carry. Not physically, but emotionally, energetically, spiritually. And so, the act of facing these forgotten corners becomes something more than tidying. It becomes a ritual of courage. You don't have to do it all at once. Start small. Open the drawer. Touch one thing. Ask yourself, why have I been keeping this? Is this part of the life I live now, or the life I'm no longer living? What do I feel holding it? 2. The objects that whisper. Someday, every house has them, usually tucked into the back of a drawer or lined up in the garage. The sewing machine you haven't touched in a decade. The stack of magazines you were going to read. The bread maker still in its box. They don't seem like clutter, they seem like potential. But here's the unspeakable truth. In the second half of life, our peace no longer comes from what we might do. It comes from what we choose to release. Letting go of the someday objects isn't defeat. It's not admitting failure. It's recognizing that your time, space, and energy are sacred and shouldn't be spent maintaining a fantasy version of yourself. The real you, the one who's here now, with a body that's changing and wisdom that's growing, that version of you deserves room to breathe. Try this. Take one item that represents a someday dream. Hold it. Ask yourself, if I never use this again, would I regret it? If the answer is no, it's time to thank it and let it go. You'll be amazed at the relief. And in its place, you might find something unexpected, the present moment, quietly waiting for you to return. 3. The weight of duplicates and what they say about fear. Open any drawer in an older home and you'll likely find it. Not just one, but 3, maybe 4 of the same item. 3 vegetable peelers, 5 pairs of scissors, 2 identical jackets, barely worn, dozens of batteries, stacks of towels that never leave the shelf. At first, duplicates feel practical. Just in case, we say. But behind that case, often, hides something deeper, a quiet kind of fear. Fear of running out, fear of needing and not having, fear of asking for help. These objects become a safety net, but like all nets, they can also trap us, not just in clutter, but in a mindset of scarcity. And over time, that mindset shapes how we move through the world, cautiously, defensively, preparing always for some imagined loss. Some truths are too quiet to be heard in a noisy house, too delicate to notice when the drawers are full and the closet's overstuffed. But if you sit long enough in the stillness of your own space, really sit, they begin to rise. We grow up believing that a full house is a happy house, that the more we keep, the safer we are. Every dish might be useful, every paper might be important, every sweater might still fit. But somewhere along the way, all that might turns into weight. Quiet, invisible weight that settles not just on the shelves, but on the heart. We at Elderly Counsel want to talk about that weight today. Not to shame it, not to rush you, but to say something simple. It's time. Not to throw everything away now, but to begin a different kind of living. A lighter one, a wiser one, and yes, a braver one too. 1. The clutter that pretends to be sentimental. Let's start with the hardest category first, the things that say they're memories. You know the ones, a cabinet full of travel souvenirs, birthday cards from 30 years ago, porcelain figurines gifted by someone who's long gone. They aren't ugly, they aren't broken, but they don't speak to you anymore. Not really. And here's the truth. If everything is sentimental, then nothing truly is. When we surround ourselves with too many precious things, we start to lose the actual feeling behind them. They blend into the background. Their stories fade. And worse, they begin to choke out space for new moments. What to do? Choose the few that still stir something inside you. The photograph that still makes you laugh. The letter that still warms your chest. The object that tells a story you still want to tell. Let the rest go, not with guilt, but with gratitude. Thank them for what they gave you and let them move on. You're not throwing away memories. You're just choosing to carry them differently now, lighter, deeper, closer to the heart.